Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review the new documentary, The Mandela Effect Phenomenon. And this is from director Robert Caveat, and this focuses on a author and Mandela Effect researcher, Jacob Israel, and a journalist, Mark Laflemme, who try to tell audiences what the Mandela Effect is and what they perceive to be the cause. And this film starts off like, hey, look, I know that example of the Mandela Effect. I know that example of the Mandela Effect. And for like the first half hour of this movie, it's just them bringing up examples of the Mandela Effect. I'm like, okay, well, it is what it is. But as this film goes on and they start talking about the causes and they try to put this all on that collider in Europe where they're messing around with like atoms and stuff like that, and it's changing a reality, it's changing our timelines, it's opening up the multiverse, and then it keeps spiraling to, oh my god, it's a satanic cult trying to open up a gateway to hell and we need to do something about it. I'm like, where did this go from talking about how people misremember, no, I am your father, versus Luke, I am your father, to, my god, we have a satanic cult on our hands that has Illuminati, like, dealing with all the governments in Europe and is trying to unleash hell and bring about the Antichrist. And are the royals in England part of this? Because, you know, the Prince William's wife, Kate, wore the same dress as, you know, Mia Farrow in Rosemary's Baby. I'm like, after a while, I'm just like, this is absurd. And I don't want to discredit their perspective and what they're seeing from these things, but one, this journalist, his whole entire argument about stuff, it's like, it's either, you know, first off, he talks about, when did they change the Lord's Prayer to these words to these words? There's different religions that have different versions of the prayers. Different versions of Christianity have different versions of the prayers, guy. And he's just like, it can't possibly be this. They changed it because the way I remember it sounds so much better. I'm like, the amount of times as journalists try to use the argument because my version of my memory, what I remember, sounds better as the reason for, like, yes, the Mandela effect happens because it can't possibly be this because it sounds so much better in my head. I'm like, okay, guy. And then there's other ones like, yeah, they'll bring up this Mandela effect. I'm like, that doesn't really, like, I'm not really concerned about that one. But this one, it's just like, if you're going to discredit other people's perspectives, then it's just like, why even bother? And him trying to reinforce is like, there's evidence because people have made mistakes interpreting things, and they can't possibly make mistakes. Like, actors can't possibly make mistakes. They can't possibly misremember things. People can't possibly misremember this. And trust me, that Shazam movie with Sinbad, I was convinced I saw that as a kid. Apparently it doesn't exist. Sure, there's examples of Mandela effects, but also human memory sucks. And they just write that off, like that scientific perspective off as just like, they, you know, the people that don't really put in the research will say, oh, it's like a group delusion or memory's bad. And it's just like, oh, but your research that's not scientific in any way, shape, or form is gospel. And then you have Israel, who's this author and Mandela Effect researcher who, for most of this film, like, the one journalist was just awful from the start. It's like, okay, I see, like, thinking about these kinds of things. And then you can even tell as the film's going on, he's getting nervous about sharing some of his real thoughts because he's like, you know, this might seem like out there, but it's a satanic cult. And I'm just like, and he's like, the workers at the Collider doing, you know, satanic rituals outside, which there's literal document, like, they do those things to mess around with people because there were protests outside the Collider being like, they're trying to open up these portals to, like, hell and demon dimensions. So, like, they messed around with people and leaned into it as a joke. And then people like the people in this documentary are like, it's real! And after a while, I'm just like, there's no logic, there's no sense, there's no concrete, like, foundation to any of these arguments. It's all just speculation, throwing out random stuff. And looking at, like, the most... See? Looking like Charlie Day from that meme from It's Always Sunny. Look, that's exactly what this film feels like. And the main researcher specifically brings up the Matrix and being like, are you going to be one of the ones who are still asleep? Are you going to be are you going to wake up? And, like, this guy has this main character syndrome so hard, and this documentary really feels like intellectual masturbation for himself. And he's just trying to engorge this feeling of, like, I know what's really going on because I'm smart and I think these things. This film is ridiculous. And after a while, I'm just, like, kind of laughing off a lot of it because it's like, there's no sense of logic or reason or any form of support. And they're just making a documentary that's like, I'm just going to say all these things because it's true. I believe it. Just because you believe something doesn't make it true. And this film completely denounces like there's any possibility of coincidence existing, which is not true. Coincidence happens all the time. And this film just feels like it's two guys who got a chance to have a platform on a documentary and wanted to spew all their conspiracy theories, and somebody pointed a camera at them and let them do it. And also, this whole entire film is just them talking, with crazy imagery thrown up and sometimes helpful visuals. But, like, it's just droning on for 90 minutes nonstop of them talking about their conspiracy theories. And in the end, they seem so self-assured about everything that everybody else has to be wrong. And there's no way that any kind of logic can dissuade them. And this film is so biased and does not present any kind of opposing view or perspective. And it's just like, they're all wrong. And that's this film. So, like, if you really believe in all this stuff, I'm sure you'll get a whole lot out of this because you'll just eat it all up. As somebody who, like, wants to see some kind of evidence or some kind of reinforcement of, like, why they're saying these things, it doesn't happen with this film. So, it's an interesting and crazy watch, for sure. So, if you're going to do that, go right ahead. But those are my thoughts on the Mandela effect phenomenon. Let me know what you think and let's talk some movies. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.